There's a sound your body makes almost every day, sometimes at the most awkward possible moments, in the middle of a quiet meeting, on a date, or right in the middle of a classroom. Your stomach growls. Most of us assume this simply means we're hungry. You hear it, you feel a little embarrassed, you think, I guess I need to eat something, and then you forget about it. But here's an interesting fact. That sound doesn't only happen when you're hungry. In fact, it often gets loudest at moments when you're not hungry at all. And the reason behind this involves a system inside your body that's been quietly working for hours, one that very few people have ever heard of. So here's the big question for today. If a growling stomach isn't simply saying, I'm hungry, what is it actually trying to tell you? The answer is going to change the way you think about that familiar rumbling sound for good. To understand this, we first need to understand where that sound actually comes from. In medical terms, this sound is called borborygmi, a fun word to say, describing the noise created when gas and fluid move through your intestines. Your gut isn't a silent, still tube. It's constantly contracting in rhythmic waves, pushing food, fluid, and gas through your digestive system. When those contracting waves meet air or liquid inside a hollow space, like your intestines, they create sound, similar to the gurgling noise water and air make when you tip over a nearly empty water bottle. That sounds simple enough, and it is until you notice something strange. This sound is often loudest and clearest not right after you eat, but several hours after your stomach has been completely empty. This is where the story gets interesting. Digestive researchers have identified a mechanism called the migrating motor complex, often abbreviated as the MMC. This is a series of powerful, cyclical contractions that move along your digestive tract when there's no food for it to process. To picture it simply, think of your intestines as a factory. When there's raw material, meaning food, to process, the factory runs on a smooth, steady production line. But when there's nothing to process for a stretch of time, the factory switches into deep clean mode, sweeping away leftover crumbs, excess bacteria, and residual waste, pushing everything downstream to prepare for the next round of production. According to researchers, this cleaning cycle tends to happen roughly every few hours when you haven't eaten, and this is exactly when your stomach growling becomes loudest and most noticeable. Not because you're hungry, but because your digestive system is running a scheduled maintenance process. You might be wondering, why would the body even need a separate cleanup system like this? If your intestines didn't have this periodic sweeping mechanism, small leftover food particles, bacteria, and residual waste could gradually build up over time, creating conditions for bacteria to overgrow in places they shouldn't. In other words, this contraction cycle acts like a protective system, keeping the internal environment of your gut balanced and clean, even when you have no idea it's happening at all. And here's where things take an unexpected turn. You might be thinking, okay, so a growling stomach is simply a sign of cleanup, nothing to think twice about. But this is exactly where things get a bit more complicated. Researchers have found that this cleaning cycle isn't purely a mechanical hygiene process. It's closely linked to your nervous system, particularly to what's happening in your brain. Some studies suggest this motor cycle can be influenced by stress levels, sleep quality, and your overall circadian rhythm. That points to something interesting. The sound you usually treat as trivial, sometimes even a little embarrassing, might actually reflect something much bigger than simply being hungry. It might be a signal that your enteric nervous system, sometimes called your second brain, is continuously communicating with your main brain, reflecting both your stress levels and your state of rest. In other words, what you once thought was a random, embarrassing noise is actually evidence of a complex, ongoing conversation happening between your gut and your brain, even when you're completely unaware of it. This remains an area of ongoing research, and scientists don't have a final conclusion yet on exactly how strong this connection really is. But it does suggest that your body has far more sophisticated internal communication systems than you might have ever imagined. It's important to remember that a growling stomach, in the vast majority of cases, is completely normal and nothing to worry about. It's simply a natural part of the digestive process. That said, according to medical literature, if this sound is accompanied by other persistent symptoms, severe abdominal pain, unusual changes in your digestive habits, or ongoing discomfort, that could be worth discussing with a qualified healthcare provider rather than simply brushing it off. This doesn't mean you need to worry every single time your stomach growls. Most of the time, quite the opposite, it simply means your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So what does this actually mean for your everyday life? The next time your stomach growls in the middle of a meeting or during an awkward moment of silence, maybe you'll remember that it isn't simply a sign of hunger. It's evidence that a complex system inside your body is quietly working, cleaning, maintaining, and communicating with your brain in ways you almost never consciously notice. We tend to ignore or even feel embarrassed by the small sounds and signals our bodies produce every single day. But the story of the growling stomach reminds us that even the most seemingly meaningless, mildly awkward moments can actually be evidence of a sophisticated biological process unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. That leaves you with something worth considering. How many other small signals from your body, ones you usually ignore or find annoying, might actually be trying to tell you something more important than you realize? What do you think? Are the strangest sounds our bodies make sometimes the messages we're most likely to overlook? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.